Picture this: gigantic, intimidating creatures that once dominated our planet, leaving behind nothing but fossils and mysteries. These ancient beings, known as dinosaurs, roamed the Earth from around 230 million years ago until about 60 million years ago. From the towering four-legged herbivores like the Brachiosaurus and Diplodocus to the nimble carnivores like the Velociraptor, dinosaurs took on all shapes and sizes. And it's not just about bones and footprints. You see, dinosaurs had a unique physiology, reproduction habits, and yes, they had feathers, just like birds. Speaking of birds, some scientists even say that the birds we see today are descendants of these ancient titans. How about that? But while we continue to unveil the secrets of these magnificent beasts, there's one incredible detail that's, well, you'll just have to stay tuned to find out. Hey there, curiosity explorers! Ready for another dive into the unknown? I'm your guide, Caesar, and joining me today is the brilliant Sonia, always ready to unravel the mysteries of the universe with me.
Hello, fellow knowledge seekers. I'm thrilled to be here, can't wait to dive into today's topic.
And if you're just as excited as we are, remember to subscribe to Curiosity Wonderland for our daily episodes. Like, share, and drop us a comment with your thoughts. We love hearing from you. So, the big question, were dinosaurs real? Well, you don't need a time machine to confirm that. All around the world, we have museums filled to the brim with dinosaur fossils, evidence of their existence. From the enormous long-necked sauropods to their smaller, more agile counterparts, these fossils tell us that dinosaurs were as real as the birds we see outside our window every day.
That's right. And it's not just about looking at the birds outside. Every hummingbird, robin, flamingo, or ostrich you see is believed to be a descendant of dinosaurs. Some scientists even call birds avian dinosaurs and the rest non-avian dinosaurs. Can you imagine? Our friendly neighborhood sparrows sharing ancestry with the mighty Tyrannosaurus rex.
It sounds unbelievable, doesn't it? But the evidence is compelling. This theory has been around for over a century now. In 1868, Thomas Henry Huxley presented evidence supporting the bird-dinosaur connection. His work has helped shape our understanding of dinosaurs as not just hulking, clumsy beasts, but agile, swift creatures.
So, we are basing our knowledge on physical clues like bone and egg fossils, collections of footprints, also known as trackways, and, of course, our understanding of living animals. It's like piecing together an ancient jigsaw puzzle with no picture to reference.
Exactly. And as we piece together this puzzle, we learn that dinosaurs were a diverse group of land animals that graced our planet from about 230 million years ago until roughly 60 million years ago. Quite a stretch, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. That's a timeline that we can only comprehend in the abstract. It's hard to imagine a world ruled by these ancient creatures, isn't it?
Dinosaurs roamed our planet during what's known as the Mesozoic era. This era consisted of the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, with dinosaurs growing in population and diversity. Sadly, their reign ended with their extinction at the close of the Cretaceous period.
That's quite a reign they had. And the sheer diversity is fascinating. There are currently around 700 named species of dinosaurs, but that's likely just a fraction of the types that once roamed the Earth.
Indeed. Dinosaurs ranged from the small and agile to the large and lumbering. You had your theropods, the bipedal, three-toed carnivores. Carnosaurs, a type of theropod, were small and agile. Think of the Velociraptor, which was significantly smaller than the ones we see in the Jurassic Park movies.
And then you had your sauropods, like the Brachiosaurus, Apatosaurus, and Diplodocus. These were massive, four-legged herbivores. There were also dinosaurs with armored bodies and spiny tails known as ankylosaurs, and ceratopsians, like Triceratops, recognized by their frills and horns.
Absolutely. But interestingly, not every reptile that lived during the Mesozoic era was a dinosaur. Dinosaurs had some specific traits. They were animals with four limbs, but not all walked on all four. They were terrestrial or land-dwelling animals, with several distinct features in their muscles and bones.
For instance, all dinosaurs had cheek muscles that extended from their jaws to the tops of their skulls. Their hip girdles were made up of three bones that fit together in one of two configurations: bird-hipped, or ornithischian, or lizard-hipped, or saurischian. Plus, they had an upright gait, holding their bodies over their legs, much like rhinoceroses do today.
And that's what separates dinosaurs from other prehistoric creatures. For instance, the plesiosaurs were aquatic creatures with long bodies and flipper-like fins. Fascinating, but they weren't dinosaurs. Just as there were creatures that shared the Earth with dinosaurs but weren't dinosaurs themselves, the world of the earliest dinosaurs also didn't look anything like what we're familiar with today. Instead of oceans separating continents, all the landmasses were huddled together in a supercontinent known as Pangaea.
And over the course of about 170 million years, thanks to the movements of the Earth's crust, or plate tectonics, the continents shifted into the forms we recognize today. Yet, through all these changes, dinosaurs managed to inhabit every continent. They even left behind fossils buried beneath the ice in Antarctica.
When we think of fossils, we usually think of bones. When an animal dies and sediment covers its body quickly enough, the bones can fossilize. Minerals from the soil infiltrate the bone, turning it into stone. But it's important to note that fossilization doesn't happen often, so we have gaps in the fossil record periods when conditions weren't right for fossilization.
And when we do find fossils, it's a delicate, painstaking process. Researchers extract these fossils from sedimentary rock using everything from picks to paintbrushes. You have to be patient and extremely careful because it's very easy to damage these invaluable pieces of ancient history.
Once a fossil is extracted, it's usually encased in plaster and shipped off to a research facility. There, scientists make casts of the bones to attempt to recreate the complete skeleton. And this process can tell us a lot about the dinosaur. From the way the bones fit together, we can infer the dinosaur's shape and posture.
Even the teeth tell a story. Flat, leaf-shaped teeth suggest the dinosaur was a plant eater, while sharp, pointed teeth point to a meat-eating predator. And the proportions of the leg bones can give us an idea of how fast the dinosaur could run.
Absolutely. Even a dinosaur's senses aren't beyond our reach. Certain cavities in the skull can provide clues about a dinosaur's sight and hearing. Plus, some dinosaurs, like certain velociraptor specimens, have bumps called quill barbs on their bones, hinting that they may have had feathers.
I remember when I was a little girl, I had a dinosaur poster on my bedroom wall. I'd lay on my bed and stare at it, my imagination running wild with what it would be like to see them in real life. But I wondered, what did they actually look like? Were they like the beasts in my storybooks, or were they more colorful, more vibrant?
And that's where technology has really broadened our understanding. Computer simulations can give us insights into how fast a dinosaur could move and how it used its limbs. We can even use computer models to reconstruct the dinosaur digitally, adding virtual layers of muscles, tissue and skin to a 3D skeleton image. It's a bit like taking that poster from your childhood bedroom and bringing it to life.
And then there's the remarkable technology of computerized axial tomography, or CAT scans, which gives scientists detailed views of inaccessible parts of skulls and other bones. Imagine, we can now peer inside the once hidden corners of a dinosaur skeletal structure.
Indeed, and the surrounding rock can offer its own clues. There may be impressions left by leaves or feathers, fossils of eggs or remnants of nests. Even skin impressions can give paleontologists an idea of texture.
But the question remains, what color were these majestic creatures? We often see them depicted in grays, browns, and greens, but who's to say they weren't as vibrantly colored as some of today's frogs, snakes, or birds? Determining whether dinosaurs had feathers or scales can also be quite a puzzle.
Very true. And in terms of appearance, evidence suggests that dinosaurs had a mix of avian and reptilian traits. But perhaps one of the most exciting and puzzling types of evidence comes from fossil mummies.
Fossil mummies. I remember reading about this in school. These are extremely rare cases where even a dinosaur's soft tissue has fossilized. Like the remains of a hadrosaur named Dakota, discovered in South Dakota. CT scans of Dakota's preserved body have yielded many new ideas about the bodies and organs of these ancient creatures.
Absolutely. But we still have so many questions about dinosaur physiology. For example, we're still not certain if dinosaurs were warm-blooded like birds and mammals, or cold-blooded like reptiles. It's fascinating how these ancient creatures continue to provoke such curiosity and wonder, don't you think? Now, let's delve into one of the most enduring questions about dinosaurs. Were they warm-blooded or cold-blooded?
That's a debate that's been going on for quite some time, right?
Yes, indeed. Warm-blooded creatures, or endotherms, generate their heat from within. They burn energy quickly, which means they have a relatively high metabolism. They also maintain a fairly consistent temperature.
Like us humans, and other mammals.
Exactly. Cold-blooded animals, on the other hand, are ectothermic, which means they use their environment to regulate their temperature. Many reptiles, for example, raise their temperature by sunbathing. They tend to have a lower metabolism and their internal temperatures vary depending on their environment and activity.
So where do dinosaurs fit into all this?
Well, that's where it gets interesting.
There was a time, especially in the late 1800s, when scientists began theorizing that dinosaurs evolved into birds, and so they thought dinosaurs must be warm-blooded. But starting in the 1920s, people began to view dinosaurs as reptiles, which suggested they were cold-blooded. This idea prevailed for quite a long time.
But are we back to thinking that dinosaurs evolved into birds? So, wouldn't that mean they were warm-blooded?
It's a good point, and it's one of the arguments for endothermic dinosaurs. But there are also valid points on the ectothermic side. Let's break it down.
Please do. I need some concrete examples to wrap my head around this.
Absolutely.
In favor of endothermic dinosaurs, we have the fact that birds evolved from dinosaurs, which could suggest they inherited their warm-blooded nature from their dinosaur ancestors.
Also, dinosaurs' limbs are arranged much like mammals' limbs, and mammals are warm-blooded. Computer models suggest that dinosaurs could move very quickly.
Generally, the faster an animal moves, the faster its metabolism tends to be.
And I remember from our earlier discussion about the fossil named Dakota, didn't it have a 4-chambered heart, like birds and mammals, instead of a 3-chambered one like reptiles?
Exactly. That's another point in favor of endothermic dinosaurs. But the case for ectothermic dinosaurs isn't without its merits either.
For instance, large dinosaurs could maintain a constant body temperature through sheer size, so they wouldn't need internal body processes to regulate temperature.
That's fascinating. And what about the climate during the time of the dinosaurs?
A very good point. The climate during most of the era when dinosaurs existed was much warmer than today, which could make the ability to generate internal heat unnecessary. There's also the matter of respiratory turbinates, structures common in endothermic mammals, which dinosaurs don't seem to possess.
So, the debate continues with compelling arguments on both sides. Now, we've all grown up with the image of the Tyrannosaurus rex as this massive, vicious predator.
But here's an interesting development. Some scientists argue that T. rex might not have been a successful predator at all.
Its arms, practically useless in a hunting scenario, and its massive body susceptible to fatal injury from a simple fall, paint a different picture.
So, you're saying the T-Rex might have just been a cleanup crew?
That's one way of putting it.
Yes, it suggested that T. rex might have been more of a scavenger, using its large teeth and jaws to chomp through the bones left from other animals' kills. It's a bit like an incident I saw at the park the other day. A bunch of crows were squawking away, not hunting, but feasting on some leftover scraps.
Funny you should mention it, I had a similar encounter. I saw a few buzzards huddled together on a roadside, picking clean the remains of a raccoon, I believe. It made me think about how nature has a way of making sure nothing goes to waste.
Exactly. And speaking of nature's processes, let's move on to another fascinating aspect of dinosaur life: reproduction. We infer that dinosaurs reproduced sexually and laid eggs, much like their closest relatives, birds and reptiles.
Paleontologists have found fossilized eggs around the world, some even with dinosaur embryos inside.
But I guess matching an egg with its parent dinosaur would be quite a challenge.
Definitely. Not to mention, large dinosaurs changed dramatically from hatching to full growth. And then there's the fact that we've discovered far fewer distinct eggs than dinosaur species.
So, it's a complex puzzle. However, these eggs and nests can still provide valuable insight into dinosaur behavior, suggesting that some dinosaur parents tended their nests carefully and returned to a common nesting ground year after year. It's a testament to the complexities of these creatures that continue to intrigue us.
Now, let's talk about dinosaur nests.
Some were shaped like bird nests, higher than the surrounding soil, indicating that some dinosaurs might have warmed their eggs like birds do.
Did they actually sit on their eggs, like birds?
Yes, some dinosaur skeletons have been found positioned over their eggs. But not all species did this. Some buried and abandoned their nests, like reptiles.
Fascinating. And what about the dinosaur babies? Were they self-sufficient from the get-go?
That's a tricky one.
A 6-year study suggested that at least some species were self-sufficient when they hatched. But others had embryos too small or awkward to survive without help.
And do we know anything about their mating habits?
Not much, unfortunately.
But some dinosaur species seem to be sexually dimorphic, meaning males and females had different physical characteristics.
This might hint at some form of mating ritual or competition.
Interesting. And despite the lack of details, we can't deny their reproductive success.
Exactly. Dinosaurs dominated the landscape for more than 100 million years.
Humans, in comparison, have existed for far less than 1 million years. But, despite their prevalence, dinosaurs became extinct about 60 million years ago.
And that brings us to the big question everyone is always asking: why did the dinosaurs go extinct?
Indeed.
Dinosaurs, along with about 50% of the species on Earth, became extinct at the KT boundary, which is the dividing line between the Cretaceous and Tertiary periods.
So, what happened at the KT boundary?
That's the million-dollar question. There are several theories.
For instance, one suggests that dinosaurs were allergic to flower pollen, as flowering plants and bees evolved together during the late Cretaceous period. But remember, these are just theories, as there's not much physical evidence to back them up.
We are still in the realm of speculation. Now, there are other theories about dinosaur extinction, too. One is that flowering plants evolved, and dinosaurs were allergic to the pollen. However, this seems unlikely since these plants existed for millions of years before the dinosaurs died out.
What about the theory about mammals eating dinosaur eggs?
It's been proposed, but considering the number of whole fossil egg specimens, it seems doubtful. Another popular theory, known as the Alvarez hypothesis, suggests a massive asteroid or comet hit the Earth, causing huge shock waves, debris clouds, and widespread devastation.
Oh, and this involves a layer of a mineral called iridium, right?
Correct.
Iridium, more common in space debris than on Earth, exists at many locations on the planet, corresponding with the end of the Cretaceous period. One of the biggest pieces of evidence supporting this is the Chicxulub crater off the Yucatan Peninsula, believed to be the result of a massive asteroid impact.
That would have been one colossal event. And do we know where this asteroid came from?
Some researchers believe they've identified the asteroid cluster, known as the Baptistina cluster, located beyond the orbit of Mars.
But there are other theories, too.
Some suggest massive volcanic eruptions in what is now India changed the climate and damaged plant and animal life.
So, it could have been a combination of factors?
Absolutely.
The best explanation might be a combination of asteroid impact, geological changes, and volcanic eruptions. It's also worth noting that analyses indicate the diversity of dinosaur species was declining before the end of the Cretaceous period. But, regardless of the cause, not all life on Earth ended at the KT boundary. Now, let's dispel a common myth, that dinosaurs became extinct because they couldn't keep up. They were too big, too slow, too heavy, and too old to make it to modern times.
This isn't necessarily true. Many scientists assert that dinosaurs evolved into a very sophisticated life form, birds.
Birds? Seriously? So, dinosaurs didn't really become extinct?
Not all of them, at least. The theory suggests that theropods, three-toed dinosaurs that include the Tyrannosaurus rex and Velociraptor, evolved into birds.
Ironically, these were part of the lizard-hipped subgroup, not the bird-hipped group.
That's mind-boggling. But what evidence supports this theory?
Several physical features, or synapomorphies, are common to both theropods and birds. These include wishbones, hollow bones, and similar hip structures.
Even the act of incubating eggs by sitting on a nest is a shared trait.
Fascinating. And what about their wings?
Today's birds have fused finger bones at the tips of their wings, which correspond to the claws at the end of dinosaurs' front limbs. In fact, a fossilized skeleton was found where the dinosaur's head is tucked under its wing, much like how a duck sleeps.
Unbelievable. So, dinosaurs continue to live among us in the form of birds?
According to this theory, yes. But just like with dinosaur extinction, there are dissenting views.
Some scientists argue that dinosaurs have more in common with reptiles, and today's reptile species, including crocodiles, are their true descendants.
As always, the truth might lie somewhere in between.
Now, if we support the dinosaur-to-bird theory, Archaeopteryx lithographica, the oldest known bird, helps fill in some gaps.
Although a bird, it also had lizard-like features, like teeth and a bony tail. In terms of this theory, over 10,000 dinosaur species live today.
Fascinating. So, do all modern birds resemble dinosaurs?
Not all, but some birds, such as ostriches and emus, more clearly resemble theropods than, let's say, robins or sparrows. But let's shift gears a bit. Have you ever watched dinosaur movies or cartoons?
Of course. Who hasn't watched Jurassic Park?
Indeed. The first dinosaur movies appeared soon after the invention of motion pictures. They often depicted humans' encounters with dinosaurs, usually through time travel or the discovery of unknown locations where dinosaurs survived.
But in Jurassic Park, they used DNA to bring dinosaurs back to life, right?
Yes, however, there are several problems with extracting dinosaur DNA. When a dinosaur becomes fossilized, most of its soft tissue decays, leaving the bones as the only possible DNA reservoir. But the bones undergo physical changes during the fossilization process. And DNA breaks down very quickly. So, finding an intact DNA sequence after millions of years is highly unlikely.
So, it's more science fiction than reality?
Exactly. Although the idea of using DNA to resurrect dinosaurs is thrilling, it's currently beyond our scientific reach. Now, here's a story from the late 1800s. Two paleontologists, Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope, had a rivalry known as the Great Bone Wars. They both published reports of new species based on partial skeletons, mostly trying to outdo each other.
That sounds like a situation ripe for mistakes.
Indeed. In 1877, Marsh discovered part of a spine and pelvis and named it Apatosaurus ajax. 2 years later, he found another incomplete skeleton and named it Brontosaurus excelsius. However, in 1903, Elmer Riggs concluded that both sets of bones were from the same species.
So, did one have to give up its name?
Yes, according to the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, the first legitimate name a new species gets is the one it keeps. So, Brontosaurus became Apatosaurus.
But I've heard of Brontosaurus. How did that name stick around?
Marsh made another mistake. He placed the skull of a Camarasaurus on his Brontosaurus body, which was only discovered to be incorrect in the 1970s. So, the name Brontosaurus had already sunk into popular culture.
Well, what a mix-up. I guess in science, the truth always finds a way to surface.
Yes, and that's part of what makes it so fascinating. Even the experts make mistakes, but we're always learning and refining our knowledge. Now, research has also shed light on dinosaur behavior, such as parenting. In some cases, it's been found that dinosaurs were involved parents, caring for their young.
That's quite unexpected. We tend to think of them as ferocious creatures.
Yes, it's a common misconception. But evidence suggests that many dinosaur species were more socially complex than we might think. Speaking of misconceptions, have you ever heard of the Velociraptor?
Yes, aren't they the scary, fast ones in the Jurassic Park movies?
Those movies did popularize the Velociraptor, but the real-life versions were probably a bit different. Some recent studies have re-evaluated our understanding of these creatures.
In what way?
For instance, it's now thought that the claws of the Deinonychus, a close relative of the Velociraptor, weren't used for ripping into prey as previously assumed. They were more likely used for hooking or holding onto things.
So, they were more like grappling hooks than weapons?
Exactly, Sonia. Dinosaur research is constantly evolving, and our understanding of these incredible creatures is becoming more nuanced all the time. In fact, evidence suggests that dinosaurs matured sexually while they were still growing, which is quite different from how most modern birds and mammals develop.
Hold on, you're saying that dinosaurs were having babies while they were still kids themselves?
That's one way to put it. But remember, dinosaur lifespans were different from ours. So, their childhood and adulthood didn't align with ours.
It's fascinating to think about how different the world must have been back then.
Absolutely. And speaking of the dinosaur world, studies have shown that the late Jurassic period had specific climates, vegetation, and dinosaur distributions.
So, different kinds of dinosaurs lived in different areas of the world?
Yes, exactly. Just like how different animals today live in different environments, dinosaurs were also spread out based on the nature of their habitats. Now, a question that's long intrigued paleontologists: were dinosaurs warm-blooded like us mammals, or cold-blooded like most modern reptiles?
That's a fascinating question. Do we have an answer?
Research is still ongoing, and there isn't a definitive answer yet. However, many scientists believe that dinosaurs were neither completely cold-blooded nor warm-blooded.
They may have been something in between, a condition known as mesothermy.
So, they were able to regulate their body temperature, but not to the extent that mammals or birds do.
That's a plausible theory. And while we're on the topic of birds, there's a widely accepted theory that birds are actually descendants of theropod dinosaurs.
So, those little sparrows in the garden are distant relatives of T-Rex?
In a way, yes. It's quite a leap, isn't it? From ruling the Earth to perching in our backyards.
That's an incredible journey, indeed.
And speaking of journeys, the story of dinosaurs is not just about their life and reign, but also about their end.
The mass extinction event that wiped out the dinosaurs is a fascinating, but complex subject.
I guess that's a topic for another day?
Definitely, it's a vast topic that deserves its own episode. But for now, suffice it to say that the disappearance of these magnificent creatures was a pivotal moment in our planet's history. So there you have it, our fascinating exploration into the world of dinosaurs, from their diverse shapes and sizes, their warm-blooded debates, to their tragic extinction. But remember, every time you see a bird, you're looking at a living dinosaur.
Your pet canary? More ancient than the pyramids.
Gives a whole new meaning to old bird, doesn't it? We hope you've enjoyed this journey back in time with us. If you liked what you heard, please blast that like button, leave us a comment, and share this episode with your dino-loving friends.
And that's a wrap for today's episode on our Jurassic journey.
We're always here to tickle your curiosity and unearth the mysteries of the world, so stay tuned for more.
Don't forget, we're your go-to podcast for timeless topics and fascinating facts. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye. Stay curious, folks. Our deep dive into the world of dinosaurs was informed by the article Are Dinosaurs Real?
What we know about the extinct creatures by Tracy V. Wilson, published on the HowStuffWorks site on November 2, 2023.
You'll find the full URL in the episode description if you fancy a prehistoric adventure of your own. Until next time, keep exploring.